Have you ever walked away from a relationship and thought, I gave so much, so why did it still fall apart? Or even worse, what's wrong with me that this keeps happening? Because at some point, when we keep having the same relationship problems over and over, it stops feeling like bad luck and starts to feel like a pattern. And one of these patterns is so subtle, you probably don't even realize you're doing it. So let's talk about the deeper patterns that quietly shape who you choose, how you show up, and why certain relationships feel so hard to hold on to. You see, most people think relationships fail because of what happens between two people. But more often, they fail because of what's happening inside yourself. This is because your relationships aren't random. They're actually reflections of what you believe you're worth, what you've been taught love feels like, and what you think you have to do to keep it. So if you keep ending up in relationships where you feel like you're too much or not enough, or like you're constantly on the brink of losing the other person, so you feel like you have to earn your place in that person's life, then that's not a coincidence. That's your conditioning of how you've been taught that relationships should operate. That's why if you want to actually build a better relationship, you can't just start by trying to change the other person. You have to start by changing your standards for what you feel is normal. Because a lot of people say they want honesty or consistency or emotional safety. But when they experience it, it actually feels unfamiliar and maybe even uncomfortable. So they're drawn back to what feels like home, even if home was inconsistent, unpredictable, or emotionally unavailable. Now here's the uncomfortable truth. You'll keep choosing what feels familiar until you consciously choose what's healthy. And those are not always the same thing. So let's get real. Healthy relationships are not built on intensity. They're built on consistency. They're not built on potential. They're built on patterns. And they don't require you to shrink yourself or prove your worth or decode someone else's mixed signals. Instead, they feel like you don't have to guess where you stand. You're not punished for having needs. And you can fully express yourself without fear of losing the other person. Now here's the part people struggle with the most. Healthy relationships can feel boring at first, not because they lack depth, but because they lack chaos. There are no extreme highs and lows, no emotional whiplash, no constant, what does this mean? Just steadiness. And if you're used to instability, steadiness can feel like disinterest at first, but it's not. It's actually a sign of safety. So how do you actually shift these patterns? Well, it comes down to three things. The first is awareness. You have to start noticing your patterns without judging them. Ask yourself, who are the types of people that I'm drawn to? What do all of these people have in common? And how do I feel when I'm in these relationship dynamics? Because awareness is the first step in rewiring what feels normal to you. So it's absolutely essential that you actually name what your specific pattern is. Because sometimes it can look like overfunctioning, which is when you're doing more than your share to keep the relationship afloat. Or emotional outsourcing, which is when you rely on someone else to regulate how you feel. or even potential-based attachment, which is when you fall for someone you fall for who they could be instead of who they consistently are. Because when you can name the pattern, you can interrupt it. Now, once you become aware of what your specific pattern is, the next step is taking emotional responsibility. This one is big. It means not expecting someone else to regulate your emotions, but also not abandoning yourself to keep someone else comfortable. It's the balance between I don't need you to fix me and I won't tolerate being hurt just to keep you. The way you can maintain this balance long term is by prioritizing your standards over someone else's potential. This means you consciously stop falling in love with who someone could be and instead pay attention to who they consistently are. Because potential is a fantasy, but patterns tell you who someone actually is. Now, here's the part that no one likes to hear. Building better relationships will cost you some relationships. Because the moment you raise your standards, stop overgiving, and stop chasing clarity from inconsistent people, you become incompatible with dynamics that once felt normal. And that can feel like loss. But it's actually alignment. So remember, you're not too much. You've just been taught to settle for too little. Because the truth is, better relationships don't come from becoming someone else. They come from returning to yourself and deciding that your emotional safety, your clarity, and your peace are not negotiable.